we like to say all animals are trophies because they are. Taking a deer of any size, even if it's a doe, that's a trophy. But we know people are proud of these animals because they take pictures, they brag about them, they show them off on Facebook. So heck, if we could scan your deer and create a memento that will outlast you from a small, inexpensive 3D printed scaled down version to a full size bronze bust. But a lot of those items are going to be cheaper than a traditional mount. But we can celebrate that 130 class animal. That's what we're interested in doing. We're giving hunters more options for celebrating their animals.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 290. Jeff Johnston, Trophy Scan. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from -33 Merino Wool Layering System, keeping you warm on the coldest days while staying breathable and wicking away moisture on the wet ones. Rackology, everything you need in one bag. Now available at Rural King and Orslin Farm and Home storefronts or online at www.rackology.org. Grizzly Ears, the most advanced engineered wireless earbuds for the outdoors. Covert scouting cameras, remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security, and Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. And show support for this podcast by visiting bigbuckmerch.com. That's bigbuckmerch.com. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey, this is JC Hall from On the Road and Open Season TV, and you're listening to one of my favorite podcasts, the Big Buck Registry.
Hey, this is Travis T-Bone Turner with Bone Collector and Realtree Road Trip, and you're about to listen to another great episode of the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, this is Zach Sandow at Onyx Hunt, and you're listening to one of my personal favorite podcasts, the Big Buck Registry.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to this week's show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, "Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry." It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we're out of harnesses. We need your help. Anybody that has spare harnesses, please send an email to jay@bigbuckregistry.com. Every now and then, a new technology comes along that solves a problem that we didn't know we had. In this case, it's about scoring a trophy animal to within 1/1000th of an inch specificity. In a computer-aided model, you can now remove all human error and get ridiculous precision with the help of Trophy Scan. Think of it like instant replay meets deer hunting. We sit down with Jeff Johnston to learn about everything Trophy Scan can do for the hunter while looking to preserve a memory and celebrate an animal beyond the traditional taxidermy mount. We'll get to our entire interview with Jeff Johnston in just one moment, but before we do, let's hear from our friends at -33 Merino Wool Products and Jim Keller with the Deer News. Let's talk about a hunter's layering system for a sec. We need to be ready for any weather that Mother Nature throws at us. With the layering concepts that -33 has created with their incredible merino wool products, they've got you covered. The -33's merino wool expedition weight garments will keep you warm on the coldest late season days while regulating and wicking away moisture in a way that only merino wool can do. You see, wool will absorb up to 30% of its weight in moisture without leaving you feeling wet or clammy, and wool insulates better than cotton or polyester and protects against hypothermia on those late season hunts. And here's another interesting point. You might not think of wool for early season, But with the minus 33 wicking technology, I'll take a lightweight minus 33 base layer any day in warm weather. Merino wool fibers naturally reject any bacteria found in moisture or sweat and gives you double protection against odor as your target buck approaches. Visit www.minus33.com to learn more about minus 33's layering technology. Use the code BIGBUCK33 to get 10% off your next order.
Now here's Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Our first story, Pennsylvania wildlife officials investigating reprehensible video of teens kicking and abusing a wounded deer. This story is from the Fox News website and was reported by Janine Puhak. The Pennsylvania Game Commission is investigating a reprehensible video of two boys abusing an injured deer in an assault that reportedly occurred on the first day of deer rifle season for hunters in the state. On Saturday, disturbing video footage hit Facebook featuring a young man repeatedly kicking a buck in the face while a friend filmed. The male deer, which appeared to have been shot, laid on the ground and pawed at the attacker while the two boys could be heard snickering and taunting the animal. In the days since, the violent video has since gone viral, receiving nearly 6,000 shares on Facebook. The incident reportedly occurred near the borough of Brookville on November 30th, WKBN reports. The following day, representatives from the Game Commission also spoke out on Facebook to confirm that they would be investigating the reprehensible incident. The Pennsylvania Game Commission is aware of a video purporting to show individuals assaulting an injured deer. The conduct portrayed in the video is reprehensible and potentially a violation of the law. Pennsylvania state game wardens are currently investigating the matter. Thank you for your help and for your concern for Pennsylvania wildlife. Anyone with information on the footage is urged to contact the Operation Game Thief Hotline at 1-888-PGC-8001 or the Pennsylvania Game Commission's Northwest Region Dispatch Office at 814-432-3187. Texas woman killed by feral hogs outside home in unbelievably tragic incident. This story is from the Fox News website. Feral hogs attacked and killed a woman outside a southeast Texas home where she worked as a caretaker, according to authorities. Christine Rollins, 59, cared for an elderly couple at their home in the small town of Anuhak. Unbelievably tragic. This is a very rare incident. Just what little research we have found, less than 6 of these have been reported in the nation, Chambers County Sheriff Brian Hawthorne said. Hawthorne said Monday the 84-year-old woman she cared for was waiting for Rollins to arrive on Sunday. The woman went outside and found the woman in the front yard between her car and the front door. Hawthorne said Rollins had a severe head wound and several other injuries consistent with an animal bite. The coroner in neighboring Jefferson County ruled Monday that she bled to death after an attack by feral hogs. Texas KATU2 reported that the medical examiner said the cause of death was exsanguination due to feral hog assault. Making history. This first-time hunter is 104 years old. This story is from the Guns America website and was reported by Levi Sim. More and more mature adults are taking to the field each year to hunt for their first time in their lives. You'll find 30-year-old hipsters swinging crossbows and 40-year-old account managers raising a rifle on public lands across the country for the first time each fall. One of the fastest-growing demographics of new hunters is rumored to be adult women, and Florence Teeters of Price County, Wisconsin, certainly fits into that category. She killed her first deer this year with her son at age 104. Not only did Mrs. Teeters kill her first deer this year, but the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources reports that she also goes ziplining, attends Mardi Gras each year, and tends her garden in her bare feet. She's clearly got the kind of zest for life we all hope to maintain, and taking on new adventures is a great way to keep life interesting. Wisconsin's gun season is just 9 days long, but Florence ended up killing her buck on opening day. She hunted her property in Price County from a blind with her son Bill. The two of them only waited about 2 hours before her whitetail buck arrived. I tapped her on the knee and I pointed, Bill said. Florence waited for her shot and then she took it. She was so excited and saying, I got a buck, Bill said. It turns out that Florence Teeters is the oldest person to purchase a license and kill a deer in the state's recorded history. They could probably add first-time licensee to that as well. There was a lot of news last year about 105-year-old Virginian Clyde Roberts, who was still hunting. He'd been doing it for about 40 years. Both he and Florence Teeters should be encouraging examples to those adults who think they may be a little too old to start hunting. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry Deer News. Special thanks to Tim Donzie, Daniel Applebaum, and John Geis for leads on the stories this week. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the deer news. Without further ado, here is Jeff Johnston from Trophy Scan. Jeff Johnston, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Jay. Unfortunately, I'm sitting here talking to you when I should be out hunting, right?
That is the unfortunate part of having to produce some content in the studios that you can't be in the tree stand. Although, yeah, I guess you could be in a tree stand, but it's doesn't make for great audio. Might make for some good video, though.
Well, I'm happy to talk to you, Jay. But the reality is, I have my I'm here in Oklahoma, and I'm fortunate enough to live on a few acres, and I've got my office door open, and I'm deer hunting right now. I've got a 6.5 Creedmoor with a suppressor, so it won't hit my ears too hard if I have to shoot from the desk here. So if I call timeout and you hear a bang, you know what's going on.
All right. Well, I would have greatly liked to see this thing go down while we're on air. That would be great.
Well, me too. And it is the rut here, and usually if I keep an eye out my window here, I can do some house hunting.
Very nice. It's that makes it nice when you're smack dab in the middle of it. Where are you located, Jeff?
Well, I'm not going to tell you exactly where, but I'm in southeast.
I don't want
southeast
coordinates.
Oklahoma.
Okay, gotcha. And we don't need coordinates.
I'm in southeast Oklahoma, kind of around Tishomingo area.
Okay.
If you know where that is, I'm only about 2 hours north of the Texas border.
Okay. All right. And what drew you to that spot?
As they say, home's where the heart is, and so of course my family's here. I spent 15 years, as I say, putting in my dues, putting in my work in Washington D.C. and in Virginia. And while there's some decent hunting there, and certainly quite a lot of public land in Virginia and bear hunting and some different hunting, you know, my calling is down here closer to home. But out here in Oklahoma, it's just really diverse. I'm not in Western Oklahoma. It looks more like the movie, the musical Oklahoma, or the rolling plains. But where I'm at in Southeast, looks more like Missouri or Arkansas, with rolling hills, hardwoods. But we've just got really diverse wildlife out here. We've got 2 different types of turkeys. It's right on the border, and there's a hybrid. So 3, there's Easterns and Rios. There's big white-tailed deer, which is what I love to do. We've got pretty good genetics and all running through this area right here. Then we've got ducks and quail. I saw 2 bobcats yesterday. Got wild pigs. So if you like to hunt, for me, Oklahoma is paradise. But of course, I'm a little bit biased because I am from here.
All right. That makes sense. That computes in my brain as to why you might be there. That's a lot. That's a lot of good activity for an outdoorsman, that's for sure. So, Jeff, what's your backstory? I mean, obviously we're here to talk about Trophy Scan and find out about the technology, why it's here, and the kind of how it all developed and what you can do with it. But I'm always interested to learn about the person or people behind the company or the new technology, because it seems like every year there's some new piece of technology that comes into the industry, and it's not always that interesting or different. It's somehow it improves a problem we have, or makes something more efficient, or something of that nature. But what you're doing is solving a problem I'm not sure we even knew we had, and it's using some technology stuff that is like for video games, So I'm very interested to hear what this is all about. It's a fascinating piece of equipment, and I think it's so new that people don't understand it just yet. So that's why we wanted to have you on the show.
Oh, excellent! Yeah, we are scanning and scoring. We're the official scorers of the Los Cazadores whitetail, the world's largest whitetail contest. It's in South Texas. It's based out of Pearsall, Texas, although there's several locations now for that Los Cazadores store. And we've had guys come in there, and it's been really well received. But we use handheld white light scanners that basically, it's called digitizing. You're digitizing a file or an animal to produce what's called an STL or an OBJ 3-dimensional file. That's a file like you would use in machining, or in our case, 3D printing. It's a three-dimensional file, but we had got some guys come in there, and of course we're taking cutting edge technology and putting it in a largely traditional world, which is hunting. And of course you have this weird, confluence, and we've had guys come in there and put their hands on their hips in the corridor where we hang the deer and scan them. And we've had guys come in there, kind of look for a few minutes, cock their head. And one guy said, "Man, this is some real Star Wars stuff, man."
Right. Yeah.
And it is, you see the flashing lights, and it's really cool technology. As we say, we celebrate the animals, all animals. We celebrate them by immortalizing them. Once an animal is scanned, it's on file into perpetuity. So if anything happens to your trophy, we can replicate it. We can reproduce that exact, 99.9% accurate, down to the striations in the skull cap and all the burrs and all its glory. We can reproduce that, but we also can score. We can score down to the thousandth of an inch. Of course, we have to dumb that down to conform to the current formulas that are so popular, which are an eighth of an inch. So that's easy. And then, of course, we can replicate. But we like to say, we're celebrating white-tailed deer. We're celebrating deer hunters, and we're celebrating the hobby and the lifestyle that is deer hunting. We're just injecting new technology in it, and there's so many advantages. Scoring is just one of the things we do, but like I said, we can, from that file, once we have that file, we can do anything with it. And there are plenty of people that know what 3D printing is, and 3D printing is pretty popular, and there's quite a few 3D printers, but there's not that many 3D scanners. Before you can print something, you have to scan it. And so we have a patent on the process of scanning trophy game animals for the purpose of scoring or replicating. So so there are quite a few patents out there involving, the medical industry and the reverse engineering automotive industry on this stuff, because that's where this technology was born. But really it was wide open when it came to hunting, because nobody had ever applied it to this. And it's kind of neat, right now on Instagram and online, you see people share their 2D photos, just photographs of deer. But we are making this where now when you share something, it's in 3 dimension, and you can rotate it, you can zoom in, zoom out, you can, see every little facet of that deer. And it's, or any animal, African animals, Cape buffalo, anything you want to scan, you can scan. You can even scan, bear skulls or whatever, but now it's in 3 dimensions, so you can really see that animal and celebrate it in all of its glory.
Right.
So in a nutshell, that's what we're doing. There's a lot of other applications too. There's some state wildlife agencies have approached us because, in court, if somebody poaches a deer, say, kind of he said, she said, or they're, comparing, well, I think that was the deer. It was an 8-point, and now we can say definitively, if you could scan it, I mean, that's a fingerprint of that animal. There's nothing like that animal. It's just like a fingerprint. So wide uses, some game managers, that raise deer. They're interested in seeing, gathering data, on those deer, as just like ranchers are for their cattle. There's insurance application where we can come in and scan your entire trophy room. And then if it burns down, God forbid, in the past, the only way insurance company, could do anything is just give you the whatever value was placed on that room and write you a check. But now we can actually reproduce those animals exactly how they were. It won't be in bone, but it'll be in high res plastic that then will be painted by your taxidermist. So, you can put your trophy room back together just like it was.
What is your position with the company? I
am the director of marketing. And so I've got a partner who is the CEO. Certainly he's better with numbers and business than I am. I'm an outdoor writer by trade.
Okay.
And so I do the marketing and feel like I've got a decent knowledge of at least the market and what deer hunters and hunters want. So that's my role.
Okay. So how does a company like this get started? It's trying to solve a problem of some sort to that's where, creations, inventions, technology comes from, is trying to fix a problem.
Yeah.
So where does the company start? What problem is it trying to fix?
Well, it got started, of course, at a NRA meeting in Houston in 2004 on the back of a soggy bar napkin. When, as all good ideas start, don't you think, Jake?
I have seen many a great idea come out of a bar on a napkin. That is absolutely correct.
We were just thinking, Buddy and I had seen some of this technology, and we literally said, well, what if we scanned a deer antler? Couldn't we print it? And then, from there, once this file is you have this file, you can measure it. So we thought that, scoring would be more accurate, repeatable if that's what you're into. So that's how it started. And, there's not, there never was a real problem, except that, if you get 5 hand scores, you're going to get 5 different scores. That's just the nature of it. And so we just thought that it could be a better mousetrap. And certainly, all hunting as humans evolve, we get new technology comes along, and we were just looking at how we could apply it and see if we could, ultimately too, hunters are fighting a battle here of, urbanization versus more rural lifestyle, and independence versus dependency. And hunting, there's been a loss of hunters, and it's not really mainstream. And even, right now on social media pages, you have to watch what you post on social media. And we're just looking to try to make hunting a little bit more mainstream. And one way to do that is to have a forum that you can, you can share your animals and glory of the hunt online and on social media, and make it more conducive, more fun. And so that was certainly a purpose too. But technology, while it seems like it moves fast, and it does, if you're trying to start a business, it seems like it moves really slow. When we first started looking at these handheld scanners in 2004, they were about $250,000 a piece. So that was, unfeasible at that time. So there was some waiting and scouring and looking, and a lot of this technology is not even born in the United States. And wow, talk about a wall to surpass when you call a company in Israel or Korea and they don't even know what hunting is, much less, sport hunting, much less why somebody would think they could start a business by scanning, somebody's 8-point deer. So there was a lot of just no's and "you're crazy," translated, of course. And so we had to, kind of bide our time, wait, but still pushing. We got some patents, and finally we, some time passed. The technology really, really ramped up, and a few things happened in that the machines have really come down in price. Right now, the cell phones are real close to being able to do this. And just some things have happened, just like VCRs, prices come down, and we found a good partner to run with it. And so here we are.
You said that the technology itself was born from technology that was in the automotive industry?
Yes. So it started in medical, and right now you can see a lot of dentist office, for example, use 3D scanning of your teeth if they're looking to make a mold or a cap or a filling. I don't know if you've had it done or not, but
yes.
It's this little wand that's a 3D, basically maps the exact contours of your teeth. So it started there, but in the past, if somebody wanted to reverse engineer something, take NASCAR, for example. As a matter of fact, Richard Childress has some of these scanners, and if you wanted to reverse engineer something, you'd had to take down an entire engine or entire wheel or axle or whatever it is, and have an engineer there use calipers, literally map everything out, measure everything, down to the thousandth of an inch, and then produce this stuff. And of course, it was tedious and time consuming. So some smart guy, figured out how to. It's very complicated on these scanners. The scanning technology basically uses a triple camera system, time of flight sensor. It has to know where it is in space, and it's measuring it's measuring the impulses of these lights as they reflect back to get this, 99.9% accurate a facsimile of whatever surface you're scanning. But it can also measure. So in the past, you'd have to break down an entire, whether it was an engine block or whatever. Now you can scan it and enter it into that file into a program, and basically it does all that work for you. And it's the same with deer. You could fabricate an 8-point buck, but it would be an artist's rendition of that buck. It wouldn't be the exact buck, but we can do that with a handheld scanner and the software that comes along with it. And then of course we've got our own proprietary volumetrics scoring system that's revolutionary. There's never been anything like it. One of the coolest things that it can do is, of course, it can map out every dimension possible on the deer or whatever animal it is, but it can also measure in total volume, which that's not a score or some human formula devised to score deer, but simply a measurement of, basically in the old ways, the only way to do this would be water submersion in a laboratory, but that's not practical, very costly, and doesn't work well with porous antlers anyway. So this is really the only way to do that, and it's simply a better mousetrap. And the reason it hasn't caught on yet is because nobody knows what it is, because nobody's been able to do it. But it's super cool and possibly the wave of the future. That's not saying we don't like the other scoring systems. We do. They're all great. But anyway, this system allows us to give a total volume score, which gives the animal credit for everything it grew on its head.
Right. And it brings up some very interesting points. One is that when you go grab a set of antlers that has large volume, it may not be the biggest score, but it might have volume, meaning it's heavy, it's dense, and you're holding on to one heck of a monarch buck, or what was a buck. And that isn't necessarily replicated as part of a scoring system, right? It's the water submersion, as you described, was really the only way to tell that, but it's impractical. It didn't have a good methodology to do it conveniently and easily without lots of planning and preparation. The second part of this is it kind of reminds me of the instant replay in the NFL. It's almost like, right? So you've got some great video technology. You've got some great technology that you can go and review the imperfections of the human error. And now you can, without a doubt, because of the accuracy of the device, you can now tell for sure, without any other second opinion, because it's that accurate, what this is, what it is undeniably, and put some kind of a record to it. And then the third piece of this, it reminds me of some videos that my son watches. He's 12 years old. He likes the video game. He particularly likes some of the hunting games, and some of the videography, or some of the graphics, I should say, look like it might have come from something like this, where it's creating a buck that looks a lot like a buck. That it doesn't look like your Ataris that you played in the 1980s. These are some serious graphic situations. Even the NFL stuff, it looks like you're going in and you're doing a scan like this of a human being and getting it right down to I forget what the spec was as to how detailed it get, but it seems like it's so detailed you could pick out a mole on somebody's face that's microscopic.
Absolutely. And you're mentioning video games. Yeah, now with our technology, if we wanted to say put the world record Rocky Mountain Bighorn sheep, which we scanned a couple months ago, you could put that actual sheep or your deer or somebody else's deer, the world record deer, or you could put that actual deer on the video game. So that's they could integrate those files and look for some of that stuff from us in the future. It's going to be fun. Really, there's all types of possibilities, not to mention just the historical records. Now when some of our great conservation groups like Boone and Crockett talk about digitizing or creating digital files, they're talking about taking the pencil and paper score sheets and just scanning them into a computer and making a PDF document. But we're talking about 3-dimensional rotating images of the actual deer that, like I said, is a thumbprint, along with filterable search results. So we could filter if we wanted to. Here in the next few years, after our database grows, we could filter, for example, every 7-point buck killed in Arkansas by 16-year-olds using .308 rifles. If we gather that data, and that's all a click of a button stuff. So I think for conservation and in record keeping, it certainly has a lot of cool possibilities. The most significant, of course, is that you can actually see the deer, not just in a 2D image. But yeah, I think you're right on in all that stuff.
Do you have support from the various scoring systems and institutions about your technology? The reason I asked, redraw the record books.
Well, and we don't want to do that. We celebrate Boone and Crockett. I've known those guys at a professional level and a friend level for a long time. I'm very familiar. We've met with them, and everybody is really curious about this. We've got big things coming from Safari Club International. Boone and Crockett, though, you got to understand, and is a historical, traditional group. And again, I'm a member. I love them. I love Boone and Crockett, what they've done. In the days of Teddy Roosevelt, he knew that there needed to be some type of system registry to not celebrate so much as study, game animals. And so we're not trying to interfere with the great work that they're doing at all. However, we think we have a pretty good mousetrap here. But to answer your question, we've talked to them. They're interested, and we're ongoing talking. But if I had to predict, I think that they're probably going to see kind of what happens. The Boone and Crockett Club has a large board of directors. Nothing they do is really nimble or fast. It's a nonprofit, so we get that. We're not we're not trying to compete with them. As a matter of fact, to make the Boone and Crockett Club, you've got to have a giant deer, and that's about 1%, of all deer taken each year, of about 6 million deer taken. And so, frankly, I love those records. If somebody kills a giant deer, we would, that qualifies for Boone and Crockett, we would urge them to go get scored and nationally recognized by that great organization. But for all the other people that shoot 135-inch deer and love those deer, are proud of them, as they should be, wonderful animals. We like to say all animals are trophies, because they are. Taking a deer of any size, even if it's a doe, that's a trophy. But we know people are proud of these animals because they take pictures, they brag about them, they show them off on Facebook. So heck, if we could scan your deer and create a memento that will outlast you from a small, inexpensive 3D printed scale down version to a full size bronze bust, that costs thousands of dollars. But a lot of those items are going to be cheaper than a traditional mount. But we can celebrate that 130 class animal. That's what we're interested in doing. We're hopefully giving more people, hunters, more options for celebrating, their animals. And so we love all those conservation agencies. We're members of almost all of them. We've worked with the Wild Sheep Foundation, Safari Club, Dallas Safari Club, Boone and Crockett, Texas Trophy Hunters. There's a bunch of them. We worked with NRA back early days. So we celebrate hunters. We celebrate all those traditional groups. Meanwhile, we're doing our own thing too. And we're just trying to provide more options for hunters. And if they like it and want to jump on board and support, we would love that. If not, we're still going to do our thing, though.
Gotcha. Have you had an opportunity to scan in some record animals so far?
Absolutely. We've scanned the biggest free range deer last year killed in Texas. We're scheduled to we've scanned a bunch of significant whitetail deer in the last year, and then we did scan and record the current world record Rocky Mountain Bighorn, and we immortalized that. We're actually offering for sale. We've got cuff links of that animal, which is down to the 1,000th of an inch accurate, just scaled down, and we're actually people are buying those. It's just a sheep makes a beautiful head. That head was actually a dead head that was picked up by a hunter, but that's the current world record, which goes to show those animals don't get, they get wise as they get old. But so yes, and we've got some more to come. The NRA has the wonderful world of whitetails, the whitetail wall, their headquarters there, and like I said, I worked there for many years, and those are all the record animals. Now most of those are replicas. But those replicas were molded. We can scan those. We can scan anything, and for insurance purposes, it's a real peace of mind knowing, if you have a really special deer, whether it's your first deer, or your biggest one or whatever, you can rest easy knowing that if something happens to it, we can bring it back. For example, first deer that I ever shot was a really tiny 9-point. It was a 9-point, but it was smaller than most. I think a dog ate that rack in a move at some point, because I haven't seen it at all, and I wish I had it. Now, and at the time I didn't have the money. I was 13 years old. My dad, I think thought that I'd probably shoot a bigger one in the near future, so he didn't offer to get it full mount for me, for $600, and I wouldn't have wanted that anyway. But now, a little bit later in life, I sure wish I had that deer to do something with. And had I had this technology back then, I could pull that thing up on my cell phone and, make a little, pendant out of it, or a tie tack or whatever in all its glory. So that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. Because there's no question, like a 2D image, no matter how many angles you take it from, it always seems like in some cases you could take a picture of the same deer from different angles and it looks like a completely different deer. Like you just can't tell,
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I haven't talked about the scoring a lot. Some people are really into scoring. Some people are not, although I have found that most people get into scoring if they shoot a really big deer.
Right. All
of a sudden they really like it. But our system is really cool. It's called volumetrics. It's largely automated. We can do these giant. We've scored some scene deer down in South Texas. Like I said, we're scoring for the Los Cazadores tournament whitetail contest down there, and South Texas is, as I said, we're scanning here. Sometimes 30 deer come in a day, and we're scanning those. And of course, there's different divisions, and however you feel about Texas hunting, a lot of it's low fence, but there's a lot of high fence too, and there's a lot of crazy freak genetically grown bucks. And again, I don't judge that stuff. It's whatever you want to do. We're not the hunting police. We just scan animals. But some of those deer, we've scored a couple over 500 inches, some in the 400s, many in the 250, 300 range. And it's just neat. It would take a hand score, most of a day to score a 500-inch animal. And it takes us, we've got to scan it, quickly process that file. But then once we put it in the scoring system, in minutes, we can have the deer rough scored. Then we'll go in and just kind of make sure everything's right. But, in something that could take hours on those really big deer, we can do in minutes. So it's just a really cool technology.
Right. Gotcha. So you said it's down to a 1,000th of an inch, correct?
Yeah. You can see everything in that deer, little grain in the antlers and little burrs on the burr plane. We actually dumb our scanners down a little bit, so it'll be a little bit faster because we don't need that detail, and we dumb our scoring system down a little bit because everybody's used to the 1/8 of an inch standard.
Right.
So so we don't need a 1,000th of an inch. So we'd rather have the speed and go a little faster. But yeah, the technology is quite a bit more accurate and precise than humans can be with a traditional tape measure.
Gotcha. Just to put that in perspective, if you were to try to take 1 inch and put 1,000 lines through it, like if you were to stack, 1,000 pieces of paper into 1 inch with a standard piece of paper that you'd have on, you buy in a store, you couldn't do it. You couldn't fit 1,000 in there, right? That's how
pretty thin.
It's thinner because I think you get 500 pieces of paper in a ream of paper, and that's like 2.5 inches thick. So now take that, and now it gives you perspective on how accurate this can be. Not that you need it that accurate based off of the standards of today, but that's how accurate it is. You couldn't fit a piece of paper between or 1,000 pieces of paper in an inch. It won't work.
Jay, I think I'm going to use that analogy. I like that. I was sitting there going, "Wow, that's really thin." Yeah, you're right. I mean, also some of the other things that it can do. Once you scan something, a human couldn't do this, but a computer can. When I say instantly, I mean in a matter of seconds, can map or basically gauge every dimension on that, whatever you scan. Let's take a deer antler, since that's what we're talking about here, since this is the Big Buck Registry. But it can map that and instantly know every circumference, on everywhere on that deer. So once it has that, it can compute a skeletal center line of that antler. So the program Volumetrics runs a skeletal center line up through the middle of the exact mathematical center of the main beams and all the tines. And then from that, it generates these measurements, including total volume. And, there's some things that humans just can't really do,
right.
Without huge volumes of science and laboratories and huge amounts of time and money. So I think it's it's a new technology that, in some ways is a little bit better. Certainly, hunters are traditionalists. There'll be some people that probably don't like it, and that's fine. You can't satisfy everybody. We're just offering, one more product, and right now we're scoring this tournament with our handheld scanners down there, but you have to come to us or send us your animal, or we have to come to you. But hopefully in the near future, before we're on track for before next season, we'll have this technology in the field, in the hands of hunters, via our peripheral attachment device that will scan animals for you. Then hunters will be able to do that by themselves in the field. It won't be quite as accurate as the expensive machines that we score the deer, but it'll still be plenty accurate, perhaps down to 1/100th of an inch and on 1,000th. And it won't be in full color, but you'll still be able to score, replicate that animal and do all of those things. So we're really excited about that.
That's cool. That's really cool. Can you walk us through the process of how it happens currently? Like, say I have a deer head and I want to have it scored through your technology. How does it all play out, like detail by detail?
Sure. Right now we really we've been working on this idea and the idea for a while, but we just launched beginning of this deer season, and we launched in South Texas. It's the epicenter of deer hunting. Now, I love my Pennsylvania guys, and numbers wise, there's just as many, if not more, hunters up there, and we love hunters all over, but we happen to live down here and had an opportunity with the Los Cazadores tournament. So we're down there. But to answer your question, come and see us in one of 3 locations in Pearsall or Stonewall or Fredericksburg, or get to us when we're at a show. We make most of the big shows like Safari Club shows and Texas Trophy Hunters and other shows, or we have 2 mobile scan stations. I like to call them the scan stands. Think about a mobile taco truck, but instead we're scanning animals. Or you can send us your animal, or we can come to you if you have several animals that you would want by appointment. So once we get your animal, we set it up to where we can scan it with our handheld scanners. Once we scan it, that takes anywhere from usually 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the size of the deer.
Yep.
We take that file on a computer.
You set it on a pedestal, on a table? Where do you place it?
Well, good question. So deer come to us in all forms for this contest. Most of the time they're coming in full body form that are just still bloody and gutted, but a full body in the back of a truck. So we crank them out, winch them up of the truck, or we can just lean the head over the tailgate. But plenty of deer come to us in mounted form. We can scan trophies, that you shot 50 years ago. So they come in mounted deer heads. If that's the case, we just hang them on the wall low enough to where we can, we can get above them. And, and plenty of them come in cape form, where it's just the head and the cape on the antlers. So yes, we put them on a little tripod pedestal. And imagine spray painting something. You need to stay about, that spray paint distance away from it. And you're trying to put that white light at every angle, all the way around, above, below, just to where you kind of spray paint. Imagine spray painting that whole animal. And, you need to hit that white light needs to hit in all the crevices, everything. And it takes a little bit of practice and, working with a few deer, and deer, there's not a standard. All deer are organic. So, it's a little bit of an art, but it's easy, once you do it a few times, and it's kind of fun actually. But you scan this animal, and then you, in the software, you create what's called a watertight STL or OBJ 3D file. I don't mean to nerd out on you here. That's just the right. Manufacturing type file. Some people want their whole mount scanned, where they could replicate the whole mount, where they'd have the chest and the head and all. But most people for the contest just want the antlers. So we make a skull plate out of it in the software. And then once that becomes a 3D file, we import that file to our scoring software. Now, of course, this is the first year. This is all going to get automated. Computers are always improving, because these are large files. So they takes a couple minutes to render that file down, but everything is improving. Pretty soon this process will be almost instantaneous, but it still takes about the same time to score one. If it's just a routine, a kind of an average typical buck, it takes about the same time to hand score one. But we have the benefits of, after you score it, you don't just get a paper score sheet, you leave and that's it. You have all these things that you can do with it after the fact. But like I said, on the bigger deer, it's quite a bit faster, because there's just so much automation in the measuring. Anyway, so then you, if you want a printed out score sheet of the deer, you can have it. Otherwise, we load your deer back up, you take off, and then a few days later, you can go to our website, trophyscan.com, create a profile. You set up your profile, and then you will see that deer, your exact animal, in 3D that you can manipulate, rotate, look at, share, have a 3D print made of it, have a bronze made of it, have cufflinks, a sticker, whatever you want to do with it. But you'll be able to see that your deer on your trophy wall on our website. And maybe you don't want to do anything. Maybe you don't want to buy anything with the animal. That's fine. But you can rest assured knowing it's there, because if something happened to it, or you just want to look at it or brag to your friends, show your friends your terrific deer or your first, 6-point, you can pull up the website, show them your deer rotating it without, them having to come to your house. So that's how it works. And then, anytime you get another animal scan, that'll go on your trophy wall too. So that's it.
Gotcha. So the wand or the scanner is kind of like the scanners like at a grocery store kind of thing, that's plugged in through a USB into a computer of sorts.
Well, yeah, that's right. So the scanners at grocery stores are almost like, tag readers. They're lasers that just read barcodes. Right. This is quite a bit different in that, it has a lot more technology and a lot more computer algorithms and a lot more.
Yeah, I figured it's more sophisticated than the grocery store.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but it's quite a bit different. It has a camera, high speed digital camera in there. It has a white light. It sends out structured light, and then it has a time of flight sensor. So almost think of, a depth finder on a boat or plenty of things. And some of the new ones use infrared. But anyway, don't mean to geek out too much, but it's really sophisticated technology. When that light comes back, it's calculating the time that light took to get back. Even it can detect 1,000th of an inch, difference, because that, light would strike the sensor just a nanosecond before the other light. And anyway, it measures all that stuff and it maps out this, we sometimes say 100%, but is anything 100%? So 99% accurate facsimile or digital rendition of your animal, and certainly those full color, very fast, easy to use scanners are still very expensive, although they're not $250,000 as they were 12, 15 years ago. They're $15,000, something thereabouts. And we also have a turnkey solution if somebody wants to get into this and become a scanner with our high end versions and be a franchisee. We've sold several of them to ranches who want this to be able to scan animals for their clients and then produce things. And some other people just want to study and gather data on their deer and animals and deer breeders. And so we certainly have a turnkey solution that we provide, everything, and you become a scanner. And then, of course, there's revenue opportunities downstream if you want to go that route. But I think it's all really exciting. And we're seeing many hunters, young, old, everyone seems to stand back and say, wow, man, this is cool. And, you're watching that animal being built on the big screen above you when we're scanning it.
Gotcha.
It's just a new technology, and it's definitely has a wow factor.
It is very interesting. It's fascinating that this technology has developed to the point where the cost is now becoming effective. And you said that there's an additional version coming that hunters can use. Is it like a kit that you're kind of visual? I'm sure this is, a cart before the horse thing, but are you thinking that this is something that the hunter could purchase? Would it be in range that they could scan their own stuff in?
Yes. So we like to say that our software is hardware agnostic, and there are several peripheral attachments. And again, this technology will very soon be on your cell phones.
Wow. Wow.
But there are several different devices that we're working with, and we're really close to there. In fact, we're scanning deer with these devices, but we need to get it perfect for consumers, and that's mostly software based. And so we're working feverishly on this project so that hunters in the field after you kill a deer, be able, or any animal. It's actually really popular. A lot of people in Africa are loving this stuff too, for importation reasons. Sometimes if it's too costly, or you can't get an animal back overseas. And I've been there. Went to Africa several times, and my first few trips I was really too young and I couldn't afford to get my trophies back. And they don't go to waste. People are eating the meat over there, and the trophies, they're hanging somewhere. But if I'd have had a scanner, I could have emailed the files to me back here and 3D printed them. Right. But anyway, all that, back to your point, yes, we are looking to launch this peripheral attachment for 2020. So hunters will be able to scan their own deer in the field. And then from there, do all the things that I've been talking about. Celebrate the animal, score the animal, or replicate the animal by, that file would then be uploaded to the website, where then you could go and do whatever you want to do with that animal, or just know that it's there into perpetuity.
So it seems like people, it's fantastic technology, because I've always thought that, if you could get something really specific that you could remember your buck by, not just the taxidermy piece, which is always, the go-to, it would be neat to have some other versions of it. And so it sounds like once you scan it in, you could create all kinds of things. Are people mostly, or what are most people doing with this so far? And I understand it's new technology and it's not necessarily mainstream yet. But it seems like for the most part, you could, if it was a world record deer, you could scan it, and then you could sell off your replicas to whomever using 3D printing. It seems like an opportunity there. What are most people doing with this stuff?
Most people, I think some of our lower price products are going to be really popular, but right now people are fascinated with the jewelries. Once you scan something, I scanned a Cape buffalo that I shot in Zimbabwe back in 2009, and it's been sitting here on my fireplace mantle for years. Well, I scanned it the other day, and then sent that file to one of our partners, jewelers, a noted jeweler in San Antonio, and some of the higher tech jewelers now are using 3D printing to create what's called lost wax cast molding. And so they have 3D printers. That file goes directly to them. They 3D print, these cufflinks that I made are, a half-inch long, and all the detail. I mean, there was a big scar on my buffalo's boss, and, with the magnifying glass, you can see that. It was missing a tooth. You can see that. It's my actual buffalo. And with this lost wax cast molding, they create that file, then they pour silver, and that silver melts away the wax mold. And what this amounts to is they don't need an artisan to create it, so it's not quite as expensive, and it's accurate. It's not an artist rendition. It's your absolute exact animal. So, you can do this in sterling silver or gold, and we like to say you're really only limited by your own imagination, whatever you want. And that's actually been a little bit of a problem because, we found a lot of people, kind of want to see examples, and, they want to know how much that costs. And I'm the exact same way. I look at something and say, how much for that? But, all animals are different. We're talking fully customized product here, where every animal is different, and anything you want to do with it, it's up to you. If you want to make, I think we're going to bring back the hood ornament, Jay. What do you think?
That would be fantastic. I see a whole new line coming out of some of these classics. That would be excellent.
Yep. If you can imagine it, I'm just thinking out loud here, but, beer tap handles, you could put your ram or antelope or deer on that, trailer hitch covers, any type of jewelry. The earrings are really popular for the ladies. And again, I was saying, this is your actual animal. I've noticed with my Cape Buffalo cufflinks, it's a wonderful conversation piece. I'll be at dinner, and I don't often dress up, but when I do, I wear my sterling silver Cape Buffalo cufflinks. But anyway, non-hunters don't notice them, but all the time, if there's a hunter there, they're like, wow, are those is that a Cape Buffalo cuff? And I say, yeah, but that's my actual buffalo. And they're like, wow, when did you go? I went to Africa too. And then, it's just been a good conversation starter. But, now on earrings, it's not going to be just a generic, antler from an 8-point, the left side on your left ear and the right side on the lady's right ear. It's not going to be generic. It's going to be her actual, animal that she harvested. Right. And again, we like to say you're celebrating that animal. We love these animals. That's why we mount them. That's why we celebrate them. That's not so much of course there's a lot of hunter pride in there too, but you're celebrating that animal, because you like and respect it. And if you can wear it around, I think it's awesome.
It seems like if you can 3D print it through any medium, whether it's plastics or metals, then you could replicate this in any trinket, device, knickknack that you can imagine, all the way up to an actual replica of it, right down to whatever detailed you'd want. So it could be a regular old mount.
You're absolutely right. And we still love, I've got a bunch of mounts in my house. I still love traditional, we call it, hair and horn taxidermy, and that will always be around. This is just an alternative. Taxidermists like us because we, provide them a way to make the antlers, the replicas, a little bit easier for them to make, and without all the, really smelly, liver damaging Bondo and all that, and they have to mold them. We can do that a little easier and save them some time, where they would just have to do the finish, the painting work and the finish work on that. But from that, we love taxidermy. We've introduced the mini mount, which is a quarter size, exact facsimile of your animal that looks like a mount, only it weighs, a few ounces, and you could put it on your bookshelf. Or do you have some mounts at your house, Jay?
I do, yes.
Well, so you probably know, I love those mounts and I love my animals, but, I've had some that have followed me around since college. And it's sometimes, you don't know if you're moving out of one place to another apartment, it's almost like an albatross, some of those mounts. God forbid, throw them away or something. But, by the time you're dragging them around, putting them in storage, you paid $500, $600, $700 for them. So, they're yours, but they can overwhelm a room. And and we're just providing another alternative. We love those mounts. We've got plenty of them, but say you shoot a little bit smaller one that's not your best animal, or you don't have the money. Here's a way that you can, still celebrate it, put it on your bookshelf. You could probably pack, 100 of these mini mounts on one wall. And as we like to say, you don't want to start Wall Wars 3 with your wife, so try a mini mount.
Right. Well, I'm going through that right now. My wife is looking at me like, "You're going to get that mounted, are you?" I said, "Yes, I am." And she's like, "Well, where are you going to put it?" I said, "Right next to the other ones." And I said, "Well," I said, when I'm 85 years old and can't move, I'm going to look at that buck and it's going to bring me great joy because of that moment in time that is frozen in my brain. And it's going to bring, and if I can't remember what happened exactly, well, I guarantee you that looking at that buck will probably recreate it. So that's why I do it. And having some other piece that is identical to that would be pretty cool, because now, as you said, the wife would probably appreciate a wall or a small bookcase of all the heads instead of a wall of all the heads where it's she doesn't want that there. And I'm not saying it's just my wife. I'm sure there are lots of people that don't appreciate taxidermy as much as some of us.
Yeah, I get your drift there. Well, I think, Jay, you should take her over to Africa and then let her take a fantastic kudu or maybe a wonderful little bush buck or even a warthog, and we'll scan that animal and make her a trinket that she can, a pendant that she can wear around her neck. And heck, if you've got the budget, we can even put emeralds in its eyes, and I think she'll really she'll love you, and she'll love hunting.
Well, now you're getting a little crazy on me, Jeff, but I get it. No,
forget the emeralds, but we'll make her something really nice.
Right. Point well taken. I mean, it just makes sense that you could have some other version of this than the full mount if you can't afford it, or you don't have the space, or just have it have the ability to recreate something if it gets damaged. Floods, rodents, house burns down. There are all kinds of reasons that you would like to have these things back at some point, should they ever be completely damaged, right?
Exactly. Those pesky rodents. Every time I look around, my dog is gnawing on one of my antler, sets that got down from the cabinet. And, some of these aren't, my prized possessions, but, I kind of wish I had them scanned now that they're gone. I shot an antelope a few years back and was going to do something with it, but I was getting ready to boil it and, to boil it down in borax to make a European, but I left it outside because those things can be fairly loud before you boil it, the skull plate and all. And yeah, my dog ate it. At least it wasn't my homework. It was even worse, my 14-inch antelope.
Exactly. These things get destroyed in all kinds of ways that you can't even imagine. And the point is that if you have it scanned in, and how much does a scan cost typically today?
So if you join the contest, it's free. That's a perk of entering the Los Cazadores contest. But of course, that's impractical unless you're in Texas. But $35. And, we do have some labor there. We have to have a technician scan the animal, and then that goes into our web space. But then, the benefits there for $35, you get it scored if you want it. And then, it lives forever, and until you want to do something with it. And our app is launching here in a few weeks. You'll be able to, to share that animal with the click of a button online, or just have them all on your phone so you can view them. So $35, I think that's kind of in line with hand scoring, because again, it doesn't happen magically. Somebody's got to scan the animal, process it, and upload it, and do those things, and those things cost money. So $35.
That seems reasonable. I mean, it really does. It doesn't seem like a scary number at all.
No, not too many people have balked on that. Once we tell them about the benefits, like I said, a lot of times if you go, to some hunting shop that's doing a promotional scoring, that'll just score your deer and hand you a score sheet, then you take it home without any of the benefits that I've been talking about. That'll cost you about the same.
Right.
So I don't think it's unreasonable. And I hate to apply things, to me personally, but as a hunter, I would do it. I've got several, bucks on my wall that I just love. I really do. They're some of the more valuable things in my house. And, I'm one low life thief or a house fire away from losing those things, but I have them scanned. So yeah, I'll never get the actual bone back, but it'll be so accurate that my friends won't be able to tell the difference.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Very cool. Well, Jeff, if we could go on a memorable deer hunt with you and maybe kind of bring all this technology together. I'm sure you've been on a hunt and probably had one scanned in for yourself. I was wondering if we could go through a detailed hunt with you.
Well, I've one that comes to mind, and it's a fairly long one, so brace yourself.
Okay.
But I was probably 17 years old. I remember that because I was driving at the time. I was here in Oklahoma, and there had been a deer that was spotted. I live on a county road, and rumors fly. Most of my neighbors hunt and all, but we all have a little bit of land, and people talk. Well, there was a deer that was spotted that was a double drop tine buck that was probably in the 190 class, pushing 200 inches for just this giant typical frame, 14 points, double drop tines, just a giant deer. Most counties and places in the U.S. on your bigger buck states have legends like this, but he became a legend here because for 3 years in a row, my neighbor in the summer had videotaped him in his alfalfa field, but nobody had ever seen him in the hunting season. And you didn't base your season around this deer that we called General, real creative, right? But you always had him in the back of your mind, and we had seen him. He was filmed miles away in the summer, so we knew he ranged for miles, and never really knew. Well, anyway, day I was hunting, I was 17. It was about noon, and I was coming out disgusted. I hadn't seen really much anything, but I was coming out, and I was at my gate, coming out to the to the county road. And I don't know your philosophy, but when I'm really peak of the rut and really buck hunting, I won't take my deer or my does on my favorite stands. I'll try to get them in a little bit more convenient places if I can. I love to shoot a doe or two for the meat and for conservation and all that. So anyway, I was at the gate. I got out of my truck to open the gate, and I looked over, and there's a doe standing right there. And in my mind, I'm like, well, heck, it's noon. I'm gonna go get a hamburger. I could have this doe loaded up in my truck in 30 seconds and be away. So perfect. So abiding the game laws, I slipped open the truck door, grabbed my 308, pulled it out, and miraculously the doe was still standing there. Well, I raised the rifle and put her in my loophole scope and just about to pull the trigger when in the lower left portion of my scope we've got what I call broom sage or buffalo grass in Oklahoma. It's about 3 feet tall, real khaki colored. I could see this antler tine, and then it was above it, and sure enough, it was a buck. And I lowered the scope down some more, and there was antlers everywhere. And about that time, and the doe was standing up, looking at me wide-eyed, getting ready to break, but she was seeing what I was going to do. She was frozen. This buck, though, was just sitting there. It couldn't see me. It could just hear my truck, but it was totally keying off the doe. And then I looked at it, and it rotated its head, and I could see these double drop tines and just a giant deer, biggest deer to this day that I've ever seen on free range. I've hunted everywhere from all the big buck areas in Illinois and everywhere else. And this was a true giant deer. Well, I couldn't see his chest or even really neck area, and I just didn't want to shoot through the grass without being able to see vitals. So, okay, I've got my finger on the trigger, my gun off safety, and I'm holding it up. So all I got to do is wait, and the buck is mine, and he's only 35 yards away. So about that time, the doe finally can't stand it. She breaks. bounds off, and I know something's about to happen. Well, about that time, in one bound, this deer got up from where he was laying. He was obviously tending the doe, like, breeding the doe, or they had been. He jumps behind a cedar tree, bounds to another cedar tree, and out of my life. And it happened again, I had my finger on the trigger and didn't have time to shoot. Well, of course, I hunted that deer. I use air quotes here for hunted him, for like the next 3 years. I was obsessed with him. Anyway, never saw him again. I never heard a tale of anybody ever seen him again. To my knowledge, I was the only one that saw him in hunting season. So that was when I was 17. So fast forward about 3 years ago, when I moved back from working at the National Rifle Association at American Hunter to back home to start a freelance career. Now I'm back on this land where, I saw that deer a long time ago, 15 years or something like that before. So I'm going around to meet some of my neighbors, and there's an old farmer named Honest Jordan, who his son was the one way back when that filmed this deer a few times. And I was just going to meet him, and we were talking about deer hunting, and he asked me why I moved back here, and I said, well, I'm a deer hunter, and I just love hunting the deer around here. And he said, man, we sure saw a big one that one time, and I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, oh, that big double drop time. And I said, yeah, I heard, and I think I saw him. And he goes, well, he's on my wall. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, yeah, I got him on the wall. And I said, can I see? And he said, sure. So, and Honest is about 80 years old. And I went to his house, and sure enough, that big double drop time is unmistakable, was on the wall. And I, it was bittersweet. I was, you're always happy, but and at least it was a little bit of closure, because I knew what happened to that deer then. And so I said, well, tell me the story. And I said, when did you get him? And he goes, oh, hell, I don't hunt. And I go, hey, I guess I never have time to hunt. I'm a farmer and a rancher. I'm like, well, who got him then? Your son? And he said, well, no, we found this deer dead. And I said, well, tell me the story. And I actually wrote about this in Peterson's Hunting I do the whitetail column there, and wrote about the concept of this story. And I said, well, how did you get him? And he said, well, it must have been, let me think. It was probably about 16 years ago. And I did the math, and it would have been 3 years after that I had seen the deer. But he said, yeah, we were riding around, saw some buzzards, thought it was a cow, a dead cow. So my ranch hand went down there in the creek and found this deer. And heck, I was going to throw him away, but my ranch hand said he was a giant. So he wound up getting him mounted, and he gave him to me, and he's on my wall. And I said, well, did you see the deer? How decomposed was it, when you found it? And he said, oh no, he looked like he'd only been dead a day or two. And I said, well, how'd he die? And he said, well, I looked him over. He didn't have any bullet holes. His teeth were plumb worn down. And holy crap, Jay, you know what that deer died of, don't you?
Old age?
He died of old age. Everybody was hunting him. Everybody knew he existed. He bred. He was, at least by the math I can figure, probably 9 years old at least. That big buck that everybody tried to hunt, everybody knew about, they knew his range, died of old age. It just goes to show, if it weren't for the rut, when big deer, big old wise deer get vulnerable, we would never probably kill them.
That's crazy. Wow. That's a great story.
I took pictures of that deer on his wall and had an artist do the, rendition of the picture that I saw in my head. That was in Peterson's Hunting maybe a couple of years ago.
Well, now you can go get a stand-in and put them on your wall.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm going to run back and I've been meaning to talk to old Mr. Jordan, and because he's an elder guy. Was a little bit skeptical of me when I told him I was a writer. Anyway, it's just a neat story that really I think exemplifies just how wary these old whitetails get. And if you get one that's either has learned or probably genetically kind of programmed to be more nocturnal, they are just elusive. They learn exactly what they can do or they can't. They are just wary animals, and that's why I love hunting them so much.
That they're spectacular specimens. I mean, just amazing creatures, and I love all their little idiosyncrasies and all the things that and all the emotions that they draw out of us, it's mind blowing.
I agree with you.
Yep.
And I know we all get, wrapped around big animals, and I do too. At times I feel like I maybe even get too picky, but I just feel like we should, remember why we're hunting, and that's to have fun. You get meat on the table and to enjoy the outdoors. So even though I'm in the scoring business now, I celebrate all animals, and just remember, we're just fortunate enough to get to hunt all around this country. And the cool thing about America is all the states and all the regions have their own little cultures and how they do it. In Virginia,
yep,
a lot of people hunt them with dogs down there and,
yep,
and packs. And Texas, they hunt over feeders a lot in box blinds, and you shouldn't knock it. That's just how they do it. That's the best way to get up over that mesquite and, and concentrate the deer. And in other places, in South Dakota, they hunt them over gorges and riverbeds and alfalfa fields, and where you are in New Hampshire, track them in the snow like the Benoit brothers.
Right. Exactly.
So it's just fascinating, neat culture.
Yeah. So I never knock a hunting style, though I've had comments about different hunting techniques and strategies and styles that apply to certain areas of the country. And my point is that we shouldn't knock any of them as long as they're ethical and legal. It's just the way it is. I've hunted dogs with dogs in Virginia. It was just the way they do it, and it was just an experience that you got to have. And it doesn't mean it's unethical. It's just a way of life. It's a tradition.
I agree with you 100%. And while we might not do it that way, it's all our common bond.
Correct.
Deer hunting is more than just deer. It's about people. It's about a lifestyle, and we've all got to stick together on this and celebrate, not only the animals, which I've said a bunch of times here, but celebrate the lifestyle. And, it's a common bond, and a lot of us live for when the winds turn a little bit cold and greens go to khakis and the deer start moving, and we've got deer camps and with uncles and grandparents and grandsons and granddaughters and you're in a cabin eating chili, and everybody's got one common bond, and that's what stand are they going, and if they're going to see a nice deer. And there's friends and family and food. It's just deer hunting in America represents for many people, all that is good, and it's just a wonderful time.
Right. And there's nothing else like it, really. Let me hit you with 10 rapid fire questions here.
Shoot.
All right. What's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Persistence pays. I don't care. There's plenty of people that, say you shouldn't hunt unless the wind's perfect and all that. Well, plenty of times you don't get a perfect wind, and you've got to get out there. There's plenty of people now that are only hunting in the evening, or if they see something on their trail cam photo that goes to their phone. Well, guess what? I've studied this and done tests. Unless that deer walks in right in front of the camera, you don't get them. You got to get out in the woods. Just like you can't catch a fish if your lure isn't in the water, you can't kill a deer if you're not hunting.
That's a very good point. We all have these things that kind of drive us crazy if we forget them in the truck or if we forget it at the house, and it kind of messes with our head in the hunt. What's that one thing for you?
My hunting license. No, just kidding. It's my binoculars.
Right.
It's my binoculars. You can hunt without binoculars, but it's just, I enjoy it so much more. I really use mine all the time, even in thick woods. You can just see so much further if you really try in the woods. But I'm looking at birds. I'm judging, deer, and I just can't stand it. It's annoying when I forget my binoculars.
Gotcha. All right. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
Gunners who seem to have no real basis of reality.
That's a fair one right there for sure. How old are you today?
42.
42. All right. What would you
tell? Had to think about that.
I know, right? I have to often remind myself. What would you tell the 24-year-old Jeff Johnston, knowing what you know about life today?
Don't get so darn offended, at things. There's no law or no amendment. There's freedom of speech, so people can say anything. It's up to you whether you get offended on that or not. And instead of wasting your energy getting offended, waste your or spend your energy trying to prove that person wrong, or don't listen to them.
Yeah.
So I'd say we've kind of got a culture of being overly offended at things, and I just think that's ridiculous. Who cares what that person thinks?
All right, we're at a hunting convention somewhere in the country, and a stranger comes up to you and asks you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
Tell them I'm a freelance outdoor writer with a new hunting-based tech company.
What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I think I'm going to go conjure something up.
Very
I
cool.
ate Axis deer fillets last night with I don't know if you know my nickname or not, but it might be Jeff the Chef, and I make a little shallot cream sauce to put over the
Okay.
Axis
All right.
fillets, and but I eat a lot of whitetail deer and even largemouth bass that sometimes get knocked, but fresh, I think they're as good as anything.
That's awesome. Very cool. You get your own billboard on the side of a highway. It's a blank canvas. You can put anything you want on it. What would it say?
I would put check out trophyscan.com.
If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
Joe Foss. Joe Foss is a decorated World War II pilot. He was the governor of South Dakota. He was the president of the American Football League. He was a board member of the National Rifle Association. He was a pheasant hunter and an all-around hunter, and a hell of a veteran and a hell of a guy, hell of an American.
That's a good one. What's a typical day in your life look like?
Right now, I wake up at about 6 a.m., start on one of many stories normally, and then start working on trophy scan stuff. There's always stuff from lining up vendors or creating content or posting to social media. And so I'm back and forth on emails, both jobs, working with editors, working with my partners on trophy scan. If I have time, I might watch a little Oklahoma football.
Nice.
and then do it all again the next day. Now, on the weekends, I go down and scan deer for the Los Cazadores tournament in Pearsall, Texas, from 8 to 6 every day. I'm scanning deer, and it's a labor of love. You're talking hunting and watching these deer come in and scanning them for the contest, and then I either ride the train or drive, back up here, and then I'm to work again on Monday. And heck, all I'm really doing is talking, writing, or working on stuff involving hunting. So it's a labor of love.
That's awesome. Very cool. My last question was, what's a typical deer hunting day for you? But it sounds like deer hunting is kind of part of your life frequently when it's in season and probably out of season for some scouting. So it sounds like it's all blended together. It
certainly is. I mean, I think sometimes some writers can get a bad rap for writing about stuff they don't know about. I try to, I try to live it. I try to hunt as much as possible. I think you can't know some of these things unless you're out there trying all the products, not just testing a trail cam for a day, but using them for a year or two, all of them, guns, ammo, optics, really have to live that. But mainly you have to study and know deer to where you can start developing, some patterns. Right now, we've had a lot of rain in Oklahoma, and there are acorns everywhere, and people are whining about the deer not coming into their corn feeders and this and that. Well, I'm a little bit better suited because most of my big buck stands are in the oak woods anyway. But when there's a bounty of acorns, a deer will step over corn to get to the acorns. They don't even pay attention to it. So, you really have to, if you hunt over corn, you got to change your tactics. So deer hunting is how I relax. That's how I, those are kind of my breaks. But on the weekends, I'm serious if I'm not scanning animals down in Pearsall. So tomorrow I have a rare weekend off, and I plan on being out there all day. And a lot of times I'll start in a stand, but if it's in the rut and I get a little moisture on the ground where I can be quiet, I like to still hunt into the wind, into the woods. And I plan on spending most of the day just outside. And I love taking deer. I love, let's call it what it is. I kill them and eat them, and I love that. But for me, it's not about the it's not about the killing stuff. I'm out there because I just love it. I just enjoy the woods, the squirrels, the animals. I see bobcats all the time and coyotes and armadillos, and I just love being out there. It's my my happy place when the wind's in my face and a little bit cool.
If we have created more questions than answers on this show, as we sometimes do, where can people find out more information about Trophy Scan, and how can they communicate with you?
Trophyscan.com on the web. Follow us at trophy_scan on Instagram, or check us out on Facebook. We're really trying to build our Facebook page right now. Follow us on Instagram, just with the pictures on there. I really think that you can see what we're about, from celebrating families with deer, and it's more of just a hunting lifestyle. Of course, it shows a few of our products and the technology, but if you watch some of the videos, you can kind of get an idea of what that is. But it's mainly just celebration of hunting and the hunting lifestyle. And most of those photos on there are mine that I've taken over the years. And it's fun to do. I would say check us out on Trophy Scan. If you have any questions, you can go to our website and email us directly, and we'll answer any questions you have. I realize right now we're kind of regionally based in Texas, but don't worry. We will soon be nationwide, so look for us in the near future.
Very cool. I got to tell you, Jeff, this has been an absolute blast. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. I learned a ton. I think this is some of the most interesting new technology on the planet, and it certainly is technologically based, which is kind of different than what you usually see in the hunting industry. So I think it's kind of rewriting some of the plans, and you might even rewrite some of the books here if my prediction is correct. But it's a very interesting place to be, and I appreciate you coming on and explaining it all to us.
Happy to do it, Jay. It was a lot of fun too. And when are we planning that hunt up in New Hampshire? Have you got my stand set up?
Well, as you know, we don't hunt out of stands this time of year. We're on foot, so.
I thought you could. A stand was kind of anything, an old log seat next to a tree. That's a deer
Pretty
stand,
much,
right?
Yeah. You find something that even has a little bit of contour for your back, and that's the stand right there. That's it. Yep. You're
all right.
You're welcome anytime. Come on up, and we'll at least find a deer track for you.
All right. Well, it was a lot of fun, and happy to do it, Jay.
Well, thanks to Jeff for coming on the show. It's always interesting to hear about a new spin, a new way of solving a problem that Trophy Scan seems to have done. I don't think we realized how imperfect the scoring system was. We hear about different controversies all the time. However, this might have solved that problem, where you can get so exact that there will be no contest. There will be no judgment. There will be no personal or human interaction with the judgment of the scoring. It's going to be simply based off of mass and can score it off of any system that you want. And this is going to give you exactly 1/1000th of an inch perspective on this animal. And that is astonishing. As I think you heard me mention, you can't fit 1,000 pieces of individual paper in an inch. It's impossible. That's how precise this new technology is. So again, thanks to Jeff for joining us and explaining what Trophy Scan is all about. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you? Or you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.